member for Timmins James Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm speaking today from Northern Ontario, where the air is thick with the smoke of fires, out of control fires. I know that people in Ottawa are dealing with the heavy smoke from out of control fires. I just spoke with a senior citizen in Toronto who ended up in hospital because of his lungs and was told it's because of the smoke from the fires. Halifax burns, Abitibi burns, Seattle burns. Alberta has burned over a month with 30,000 people evacuated. What we are dealing with is an unprecedented crisis as the climate catastrophe descends on us. And yet in the House, we see shenanigans, game playing, chest thumping, climate denial. I'm speaking today on the need to get this legislation, this budget implementation passed so we can address serious issues that are facing our country and our planet. Certainly, from the people that I represent, they want to know that this dental care plan for seniors is not going to be obstructed by the man who lives in the 19-room mansion at Stornoway with his own personal chef. They have a right to dental care. They want that dental care passed. I will stay night after night until we get that passed. Same for the people who are calling us about food insecurity and inflation. They want us to act. But more than ever, I'm hearing from people who are deeply concerned about the climate catastrophe that's unfolding. You know, Lucretius, the Roman poet, had said that there was a thing that they call the Lucretius problem, that a human being can't imagine a river bigger than any river that he's ever seen. And perhaps for the longest time, we couldn't imagine the catastrophe of a planet unbalanced. Then Lytton burned. And then Fort McMurray burned with $9 billion worth of damages. Then there was the Paradise Fire in California. Then Australia burned. Then last year, the Arctic Circle was burning. And this year in Canada, more land will burn than in the entire history of our country. And this is not a one-off. This is the accelerating impacts of the global temperature rise. So our Parliament does need to show Canadians that we are going to do something about it. So part of this is the work that we have been doing as New Democrats to push the government on embracing a sustainable energy future. The time is now. In this budget, we have seen some significant promises. We need to make those promises happen. And there's another urgency as well in terms of the climate crisis. It's the urgency of not being left behind. In the 9 months since Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, 31 battery manufacturing plants have come on stream. This will amount to 1,000 gigawatt hours of energy by 2030, enough to support the manufacture of 10 to 13 million electric vehicles a year. We cannot be left behind while America shoots ahead. In energy production, in the 9 months since the IRA, companies have announced in the United States 96 gigawatts of new clean power within an 8-month period. That's enough to power 20 million homes. This is the work that we've been doing as New Democrats, and yet we see the Conservatives, who are longstanding climate deniers, make fun of, interfere, and now do everything they can to block this funding from getting out to kickstart clean energy projects. I know when the leader of the Conservative Party, the member for Stornoway, came to my riding, he was making all kinds of jokes about electric vehicles. I mean, I was checking his work resume, so I know he's never worked in manufacturing or the mines, but my region is going to be dependent on the critical mineral supply chain for jobs, for long-term sustainability. We know that the Conservatives have attacked and undermined the investments at the EV plant in St. Thomas. They've had nothing to say about the need to get the battery plant in Windsor off the ground, even though that's thousands of jobs. And just recently at my committee at Natural Resources, the member for Calgary Centre claimed that the critical mineral strategy was, quote, a minor contribution to energy. And that he said that EV plants in the supply chain will have nothing or have little to offer for 20 years. Well, that's just false. And I want to get down to that right now because we've been dealing with the disinformation from the Conservatives consistently. Peak oil, that is where oil reaches its historic high, was supposed to be 2030. But the massive changes in renewable energy has reduced that to 2025 and possibly 2024. This year, investments in renewable energy was almost 2 times that of oil and gas. So the urgency is that Canada does not leave its energy workers behind. Just this past week, I held a press conference, the Alberta Federation of Labour, who I've worked with closely on this, and the energy workers there who are ready to embrace the clean energy opportunities in hydrogen and geothermal. They've got the skills, they've got the ideas. But what we all know is that the clock is ticking, and we have to address this because whether the Conservatives want to admit it or not, the transition is happening. And this is what I hear from energy workers in Alberta. They know this. The day after Danielle Smith won election, 1,500 Suncor employees, 10% of its workforce, were fired. Suncor is getting rid of its workers and shifting to automation. That's where the big money is. We've seen over the last 9 years, Texas lost 110,000 oil worker jobs. Those jobs are not coming back. Alberta lost 45,000 jobs over the last 9 years in the oil sector. Those jobs aren't coming back. So we need to retool. We need to build an economy that is actually focused on creating sustainable energy from the immense resources. There's no other country in the world that has the resources that we have or the skilled workers. But what this country is being blocked by is an immature opposition in terms of the Conservatives who continue to deny the climate catastrophe. I encourage them to step out and go take a big, deep breath of that smoke-filled air to realize that the fire is here. It's coming. It's not going away. We have to actually address it. So there are many shortfalls in this present government, and many of those shortfalls I will continue to call out. There's many shortfalls in this budget, but there are key areas that we have to move on with a sense of urgency and a sense of responsibility for the Canadian people. We have to get this passed so that the National Dental Care Strategy actually is able to help seniors this year, as was promised. We have to get the funding and support out there to start the clean energy strategy so that we're not left behind with our American competition or with the Europeans or with the Chinese, that we actually then need to move quickly on the legislation that will enable the protections in place to make sure that communities are part of the sustainable jobs transition, and to make sure that energy workers are at the table, that they are the ones whose expertise we need to be hearing from at this time. So I'm encouraging my colleagues to put the June games playing away for a little bit. People sent us to get a job done. They sent us to work. I'm here to work. I'm here to make sure that on behalf of energy workers, natural resources workers, miners in the communities I represent, and young people who are watching the planet burn around them, that they are not going to look at a parliament that ignores that and plays games. We have a job to do in the midst of a climate crisis that is worsening, and we have a potential, but the window is narrowing for action. So I urge my colleagues to step up. Let's get this thing voted on, and then let's get on to other really important matters that are facing our country at this insecure time. Thank you.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Vancouver-Granville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to ask my honourable colleague a question. Very, very important speech. And I guess as I was listening to what he was saying, I was reflecting on the things that are in this budget. Dental care, support for improving our healthcare across this country, dealing with climate change, supporting our most vulnerable. And I'd like to ask the honourable member, why does he think that the opposition and the leader of the opposition are so interested in acting against the interests of Canadians?
The honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Well, I want to thank my honourable colleague for that question. Certainly the leader of the opposition has always acted in his own interest. The guy owns a house in Ottawa, but he gets to move into Stornoway, a 19-room mansion with its chefs and groundskeepers. He's had public dental care for nearly 20 years, paid for him and his family, and yet he expects us to disrupt Parliament to the point that senior citizens don't get dental care. That's not leadership. That's grandstanding. We need to be able to reassure Canadians at a time where they have good reason not to trust politicians, that we're actually here to do a job, not just to pull stunts, not just to light our hair on fire, and to actually deliver something. So I don't know what the problem with the member for Stornoway is, but senior citizens on my watch are going to get that access to dental care. They deserve it. They have a right to it.
Comments? The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Madam Speaker, this member, when he ran to be the leader of the NDP, did he say anything that he would never occupy Stornoway? And in fact, Madam Speaker, I was here in 2011 when we had the Harper majority, and that member didn't say boo about Tom Mulcair occupying Stornoway. So, Madam Speaker, the NDP talks a big game, but they're, again, always about themselves. The lack of leadership, the fact that this member makes it so personal against the member for Carleton just shows that he must be feeling the heat from the leader of the Conservative Party. And I look forward to the Conservative Party being in his riding, talking about real ideas that matter to that person, to that member's riding.
Here, here. Here, here.
Order. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Ouch. I'm hurt. You know, we have a leader. I looked up Mr. Stornoway's job record because I thought, well, maybe I would understand him better. And I can't find that he's ever actually had a job other than professional politician. You know, I was a carpenter. I was a house builder. I had.
Point of order. The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Madam Speaker, we here use name, or instead of names, we use the title of the riding. The member is not following the standing orders. I'd ask you to bring him to compliance.
The honourable parliamentary secretary has a point of order.
On that point of order, I don't remember the Conservative outrage when they were calling it the Minister of Inflation.
So, again, this was a point of, the honourable parliamentary's point is a point of debate. I do want to remind members, because one person is doing it doesn't mean that it's okay for another person to do it, but I just want to remind members that, yes, when it comes to respect of the House, we should be recognizing each other by either the riding name or their position in Parliament. The honourable member for Timmins James Bay, and that applies to all sides.
Well, thank you, Speaker. A double ouch. They certainly have a raw wound there. I was only talking about the member who moved out of his home in Ottawa and moved into Stornoway, which is a fact, because that's a 19-room mansion funded by taxpayers. Now, I was just saying, you know, I had a job. I had many jobs. And one of the jobs that I had when I ran my own business was having to go to dentists to try and get a deal on dental care for my children. The member who lives in Stornoway has never had to do that. He's lived pretty damn well off the taxpayer. So for him to tell senior citizens in 2023 that they have no right to dental care, and he will do anything, he said he's going to do anything, jump up and down all night long in Parliament to stop this from happening. I say to him, you know, he said, Shay to his chef in the morning, how about a little bit of eggs, some yogurt, some granola, just a calm, like some green tea, so he's not just the rage bucket, that he's actually shows up to Parliament to do some work.